Hi, I'm Tara Cross and welcome back to Creating Joy. Today we are going to be making gnome placemats. Okay, let me show you exactly what we're making. So here we have a red gnome and here we have a green gnome, and so that's what we're doing. We're going to make a red gnome placemat and one green gnome placemat today. Okay? To help us out, I am going to be using this book called Quilted Gnomes for Your Home, 9 Whimsical Designs from Annie's Quilting. So I will be putting the link down below if you want to get it and follow along. They have little pattern pieces that we're going to be cutting out. So once you get your book, you can cut out all the little pattern pieces, and then we're going to be cutting them out and doing a lot of applique. So if you want to follow along with me, the first thing that we're going to be doing is I am going to be taking my fabric that I'm going to be using for my binding and cutting out 2 1/4 inch of the width of the fabric. Okay, so I'm going to be taking 2 1/4, using my ruler and cutting it across. So for me, I want my binding to look the same. It's going to match the hat and the body of the gnome. You can do it however you want. If you want a different color for the hat and the body of the gnome, then you can do that. But I want it to match. So we've got here's the hat, here's the body, and here we have the little hat trim. It's like a little flower. Okay, so we're going to set those out on our fabric and then go ahead and cut those out. So one thing I did too is I made my pattern pieces with cardstock so that if I wanted to reuse them, for me, I'm actually going to do 6 placemats for the people that I have in my home right now, and so I'm going to do six different placemats. So I want to be able to reuse my pieces. If you were just going to maybe make 1 or 2, then just plain paper, photocopying it would probably be just fine. And then the little flower, just do it in one of your little scrap pieces that you have now. So I've got my little trimming scissors. It's so small that sometimes it's nice to have little scissors. Yeah, this is much easier. Now it says from the green tonal, so whichever color you want for the green for the other part. So I decided I want this plaid green and blue. I really like plaid. So I'm going to use this for the body for my gnome. Okay, so we're going to use the same body as the red. So we'll just set that aside and just take it and pin it on this. And then we're going to use the tree. It's going to be the hat for this gnome. Okay, so we'll go ahead and cut this out. So now I've got the tree cut out. I've got one body and one tree of the green. Okay, and looks like we need to do a little hat trim too. So take this back and we'll get a little scrappy piece, just like we did with the other we'll cut off that piece. Okay, so we'll get the little flower again, and we'll cut out a little flower. Now we're going to do, from the white tonal, do 2 beards and mustaches. Okay, so I am using white felt. So I'm going to take the little, we've got the beard and the mustache. Okay, so got the beard, fits right there, and got the mustache, fits right at the top. Okay, so we're just going to go around those. And we need to do 2, so I actually have more over here. I'm going to just go ahead and cut it right here. Now we'll cut the 2 mustaches. So the thing I noticed with this, you want the little bump right there to make it look like where the nose is going to go, okay? So make sure when you're cutting it, make sure you get a little bump so that there's a place for the nose to go, okay? And cut out the second one. The next thing they have is, okay, so this actually was not the mustache, this was the trim of the hat, but I was going to do that white also. So if you want to do the trim of your hat, they have like a little white with, if you look right here, it's white with little red dots. So I personally didn't have any fabric that I thought would go good with the fabric I'm going to do, so I chose to just use my felt. And I thought it would be fun to be fuzzy anyway. So, and looking at it a little more closely, also for that part, you actually need 1 trim for the red, whereas the tree, if you want, I guess you could put that right there. So, and that, the reason why they have the bump too is to go, because it goes on top of the nose for that, okay? So I don't think it would fit with the tree. So, and they don't have it for the tree. So we'll just do it with the red. And then this is the mustache right here. So, okay, so we will cut 2 of those now. Okay, the next thing we need is black for the shoes. So I have a little piece of black right here. Okay. So the shoes are teeny tiny. So you're supposed to cut 4 of these, okay? So to do that, see if I don't, I'm trying to make it so I don't have to cut so many. I'm going to fold it. And then I'm going to fold it in. So there's 1, 2, and then now there's 3. And now I'm going to fold it 1 more time. So I'm going to check it in. So there's 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay. So now I'm going to put my little shoe right here. And I'm going to go ahead and cut it. So I'm making sure they're all at the top. So I want to cut it right at the edge. So really need to make sure that it's all aligned right at the top to be able to do that. Okay, so they're all aligned now. So now I'm going to put this right at the top. I'm going to grab my scissors. Okay, so in one cut, I now have 4. I'll count again, make sure I've got it. There's 1, 2, 3, and 4. Awesome. Okay, so that goes to that one. Got that. And now we are going to do the nose. So I have kind of a pink flesh kind of color that I found in my stash. And all of this, I just went through my stash and I went shopping in my own fabric for this project. Okay, so I'm going to cut 2. So again, we can do the same thing we just did and just fold it. So we have 2, and then we'll lay it on top and go ahead and cut. Here we have our 2 noses. So now we have all of our little pieces all cut out. And so the last thing we need to cut out is the binding for the other one. So I'm going to be using green with white polka dots for the other placemat. And so we'll line it up and cut 2.5 inches. Slide things out of the way. Okay, so now all of our pieces are all cut. So now we are going to be cutting the base of the of our placemat. So for that, we are going to be cutting 2 13 inches by 16 inches, which I've already got them cut and ready to go. And I'm just going to go over and iron them really quick. I've got one here and one here. So I'm going to go over and iron them, and then we're going to come back and we're going to start placing our pieces. Okay? Okay, so here are my gnome pieces. I've put them all together just to see how I want them to look. And when I put the original pieces, you can see the red and the plaid. Originally they had said to take the red and put on the plaid, and the plaid little flower thing or star to put on that. And on my particular ones, they just did not look good. So I went ahead and I cut white. Now I think that I like the way it looks. And so now I'm ready to do the next step. So what they say to do now is to take your iron-on applique adhesive and to cut out your pieces on here. So I am now going to do the same cutting with my pieces on here, and of course I'm going to be using my paper scissors. I don't know if you're like me, but I literally write paper in my sewing room because I do not want to make a mistake and use my fabric scissors on paper and make them go dull. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to cut out all my pieces on this applique fusible paper. So this one is a heat and bond transfer paper. So I'm pinning it onto the bumpy side, okay? And so we're going to cut that out now. So the bigger pieces are easier to pin on than the teeny tiny ones. If you pin on the tiny ones, then it's hard to cut around them. And this you want to cut it as close as you can to it, because it is a sticky adhesive that you're going to be putting on. So you don't want to get that on stuff. Okay, so yeah, that looks pretty good. Again, I'm just cutting right around it. And then I'm going to cut up close. Now we're going to go to the ironing board. Okay, as you can see, I have put down a cloth to protect my ironing board. So as we talked about before, there's a sticky substance that is going to be ironed onto the fabric, and I don't want my ironing board to get sticky. So I put down a piece of fabric that I don't need. It's okay if it gets sticky. And make sure I have my iron ready. It's on medium and I have the steam off. Okay, so now the directions say to put the fabric face down and the paper up. Okay, so that's what I'm going to do with each of the pieces. Is I'm going to make sure that the fabric is down and the paper up. So when you're doing this, you don't want to iron back and forth. You're going to press. You're just going to press down, okay? Now, each instructions will tell you how long you're going to need to do it, okay? So with mine, it says to press and hold the iron for let's see, place and hold the iron on the paper liner for 2 seconds and repeat until the surface is bonded and then allow to cool before you try to remove it, okay? So make sure it's all lined up the way you want it. Okay, I'm just going to try these first. So I'm going to make sure it feels hot enough. Okay, so I'm going to take it and hold it 100 to 100 and lift up. And I'm just going to leave it, okay? And now I'm going to do the next section of things. I am removing the pins. The next thing our instructions say to do is place the material or the adhesive side down on top of your project and press and hold the iron for 6 seconds on each side. Okay, so after we've cut it, so we have it all cut, and now we're going to peel it actually. So the instructions say to peel off the thing, each of the pieces, and stick it on your project where you want it, okay? So that's what we're going to be doing next. I'm going to move my pieces, and I'm going to, this is my placemat fabric. Make sure it's all ready to go. I'm going to check it and see where I want to place it. I like looking at the picture again, seeing that it's approximately 2 inches away from the border and about 1 inch up. So, you know, maybe I would want it about right here. So maybe put the feet around about right here. I mean, if you are totally like a perfectionist, you could totally measure each one to make sure they're all, oh, let's see, I'll put the feet exactly right there, right where my thumb is, okay? So you decide how much of a perfectionist you're going to be with yours. Okay, so I'm going to put the body down first. So the way we have to do it is we have to take off the paper. And then, okay, so I'm going to do about right there. Okay, now it says to put another cloth on top when you are ironing it. Okay, so I'm going to set another cloth on top, and this time I'm going to hold it for 6 seconds. Okay, so let me check that. Yep, looks good. Okay, next we're going to do the beard. So we'll take off the paper off of the beard. Okay. Now we'll iron it on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Okay, next we're going to put on the hat. So before I iron it on, I'm going to just play with it again and make sure it's positioned where I want it to be. Okay. So with the mustache, I noticed that on the picture they have it slid up so there's more room on the beard. And so I'm just kind of pushing it up a little and then putting it on there. You just play with it, see how you want it to look. You can move it back and forth on the hat. Move it around until you get it just right how you want it to look. Okay, I think I like it like that. Okay, so now that I know how I want it, then we take it off. I'm going to hold it there so it stays right where I want it. And the next one we iron on is the hat. Okay, I'm going to put the mustache on next. Have it where I want it to be. Okay, so we have our basic gnome all ironed on, and for the first placemat, and now I'm going to iron on for the second placemat. After we have them all ironed on, then we will go to our machine and do the blanket stitch around it. Okay, we've got our second one all done. So now we're going to take it to the sewing machine, and so as you can see on here, what they do is they do a little bit of quilting. They do like a little line here and then back and forth on the Christmas tree. And then along the edge, they do a blanket stitch here they do black, and then along here they just do a little zigzag actually around the tree. Teeny little zigzag. So you can do whatever you want. They did black around here, green around here. Around here it looks like they did a pink. So it's going to take like a little time of just doing it out. They match this. So since mine is white, I will be doing white here, probably a green along here, find a pink right there. I'm going to do a black like they did around here, and then probably black. So probably match your colors. Like if I do black, I'll probably do black around the star too, and do black and black and black. And then do blanket stitch on those things, and then around here, probably just do a zigzag around this in a green. So I'll meet you over at the sewing machine. We'll try that out. Today I'm sewing on my Brother machine, the SQ9050. And if you look on here, on the 08 has the blanket stitch that I'm going to use. So I'm going to go ahead, I've got 0 on that side, and then I'm going to go up to 8 on this side, okay? So that puts it in the right position to do our blanket stitch. So go ahead and get your machine set up with your blanket stitch, and we will start sewing. So I'm going to make my stitch a little bit smaller. I started sewing and it's really big, so I'm actually making my stitch width. I'm going to bring it down to 2.5 and go from there. So when you're sewing this, because there's so many curves around the tree, you're going to have to keep stopping and going. And then turn it. Okay, did a little back stitch, and now I'm going to trim off my strings. Okay, now I'm going to do the bottom part. So one thing, so when you're sewing with your blanket stitch, you want to look at the way your stitch goes and get the straight line to go right against the edge, and then get the little blanket stitch that goes in to go in towards the body, okay? I'm just going to go straight across the bottom of the feet with this. Trim off all the strings, and now switch out our color. So now I'm going to do the black. Okay, so here we've got our tree and our bottom. So with the, I did decide to go across the bottom. You may want to stop and then just go around it with black. I thought it would be fun to have like a little design on the shoes, is what I was thinking. So okay, so I'm going to start sewing on the left side of the beard and go around so that my blanket stitch is right against the edge. So I trim off all those strings. Now I'm going to do the mustache. Again, we're going to start on the left side and try and go as close to the edge as you can. Okay, so this is how it's looking so far. Before I take my black off, I'm going to do the shoes. So I'm going to do right along the bottom, the very, very bottom of the shoes with black and go around the humps. Great, so now I'm going to go up and do the star. I've decided to just keep it with black. So that's kind of cute how it turned out with the star. I like that. Okay, so all I have left to do is go around the nose. Finish it off, and we are done with this part of doing the blanket stitch. Trim off all your strings. Okay, here we go. It is completely done. So, and done with doing our stitching. Okay, now we're going to do the next one. Okay, now I have my red gnome. Okay, here we have it. It's our little gnome. Okay, so now we're going to cut our batting. I'm going to go ahead and cut it 13 inches in the width. Straighten out the edges. Going through several layers of batting, so you really have to push hard. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 13. Okay. And then I'm going to go ahead and cut that. Did good. Awesome. Okay, great. So now we're going to pull this up, put it away. Okay, so next I'm going to open this up and do 16 inches. Great, so I'm on the 20 line. Remember, we're lining up our lines at the bottom and at the top to get it straight, okay? And press down, and then we're going to push, much easier with less batting. Okay, look at that, we got our 2. So now we're going to cut the fabric for the bottom of our project, okay? Okay, I don't know if you're like me, but when they have the cells on the bolts, I pick up bolts of my main colors, like black, red, and white, and tan, because I use them for everything. And since I have black sitting around, I thought that I would use that for the back of my my placemats because no one's gonna really look at them anyway, and I don't really have any gray to match my gray. So that's what I'm using. I'm using black. You can use whatever you have on stash. Like I said, this is a project that I'm trying to use all of the fabric in my own stash so I don't have to go shopping. So let's give it a try. To the side. And so I'm going to go ahead and trim off my selvage. Okay, so I've just trimmed off my selvage, and now I'm going to double it like I did before. Keep it doubled. Okay, I'll line it up. And this time I'm going to cut 13 inches. Okay. So the 23 line for me, because I'm going downwards. Okay. And so I've got my 2. Okay, so now we are going to layer our sandwich of our placemat, our quilt placemat, right? Okay, so let's get all of our pieces. You need your top, your batting, and your bottom. Okay, we're going to layer them up. I've got my black, it's on the bottom. Then I'm going to set my batting in the middle, smooth it out, take up any extra strings or whatever. Okay, get it all even. Okay, then I'm going to get one of my quilt, this is placemat, my placemat top. Line it up. Okay, so then what I do is I take my safety pins that I have. So I am going to just pin it in a couple of places and put one right on top of my gnome itself. I have all kinds of sizes of safety pins that I'm using. So now is the time also to think about, okay, if you're going to quilt it, how are you going to quilt it? What design do you want to put on it? Do you want to quilt it by hand? Do you want to do straight lines? Do you want to do swirlies? What is it you want to do on your placemat? So what they recommend is they did big, like 2-inch squares. So I think that I'm going to do that today. So I'm just going to follow what they did and do the, I'll be tracing out 2-inch squares on it. Okay, so I've got this one. So it's all held together with my safety pins. Okay, so now that we have it all pinned, so if you have any chalk, fabric chalk, or if you have an erasable marker or pencil, whatever you have to draw lines, we'll get our ruler and our drawing utensil and come back, and I'm going to turn it over and I'm going to be drawing on the back. Okay? Okay, so I have these pens I got from Madame So, and this one just happens to be a white one that I'm going to be using. And so I'm going to go ahead and do 3-inch lines. Okay, I'm just going to line it up with my fabric, and then I'm going to come down and do 3 inches. Okay. So So just go ahead and do 3 inches across and then do 3 inches the other direction. Okay, so there I have my grid, and now I'm going to do it on the other one, and then we're going to go ahead and we're just going to sew straight lines. Before you get sewing, now that you've made your grid lines, you need to take your pins and you need to make sure that they're in the middle of the squares, okay? So if you want to go around where your gnome is, you can, or you can go over top of them. That's going to be up to you whether you want to do that. Okay? Just remember that you will end up with little lines on top of them. And so it might be good even to trace around where your gnome is. Like if you can feel it, like I'm just going to trace around the outline of where I can feel it. So remember, these pens that I'm using, they disappear by heat. So after I'm all done sewing, I'm going to iron it, and all of the markings are going to disappear. Okay, so I just did, it's a basic tracing of it so that I know where it is. And you say I made a mistake, it doesn't matter, it's going to disappear. I'm just not going to sew on that mistake part, okay? So I'm going to just leave that section, that general section open. I'm not going to sew right there. In fact, I will probably sew right here and backstitch, and then maybe start right here at the bottom and then backstitch here and go, okay? So just so you know, that's my plan for this particular one. Okay, so happy sewing. Okay, so we're going to take our placemat, we've drawn our lines, and we're going to start sewing in the middle. Go ahead and sew and backstitch, and then go to the bottom of your line, backstitch, and then we'll go to the next one. Okay, so when I get down to the bottom, I'm going to put the needle up, and then I'm going to just keep it. I'm not going to cut it. I'm just going to go to the next row, and I'm going to start sewing. Okay, now you can go ahead and trim it. Okay, so we're gonna look at the front, see how it looks, smooth it out. Okay, so far you can see this is kind of how it is looking. So now you see the gnome on the front, and I want to go around the gnome. So I'm going to actually sew on the side of the gnome. Well, actually I've already drawn my gnome, so I'm gonna just sew up to where the gnome is, and then I'm gonna come down here and I'm gonna sew underneath. So that's what I'm gonna do. I'm actually going to sew on the back because I just realized I have black thread. Black thread on the top and the white on the bottom. And then slide it down. Okay, and then just bring it over to the last line and sew up the last line. Okay, so here we can see the different lines. Now we're going to do it across the other direction. Before I do that, I am just smoothing it out. Okay, It's hard when you can't clip them together. I mean, I could have basted around the outside. I was just trying to see how it would go without basting it. Probably next time I would baste around the outside to try and make it so it doesn't wrinkle so much. So again, I'm going to start in the middle, and I'm going to have to stop when I get to the gnome. Okay, and then I'm going to go on the other side of the line, the middle line. Okay, now we're going to trim off all of the strings. So we have all of these little strings on the end now. Okay, and we're going to go to the iron and iron off all of the white. Okay, so let's watch the magic. As soon as I iron, just disappears all of the white. Okay, so I'm going to take out my pins. I probably could have taken out my pins before I ironed it. Would probably have been a little bit easier, but that's okay. Still worked. Okay, so you can see the squares just like they had it in the book. Got squares, and then on the front, we're going to lay it down, and we're going to trim off the excess, the batting, and we're going to line everything up and get it all straight. Okay? Okay, so here's my squared up placemat, and now I'm going to do my next one. Okay, so I have put green in the top of my sewing machine and black in the bottom, for the bottom, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to start at the top of my tree, and I'm just going to go diagonal, diagonal, and diagonal. I'm just going to do a tiny bit of quilting just so that it has some little quilting on it. So I don't know if you can see it or not, so I just went across, over, and then over here. So it just gives it a little texture. And then in the back, you can see there's like a little zigzag of black on the back. Now what I like to do is I'm just going to sew right along the edge. You can do a zigzag, you can do, there's a lot of different things that you can do. You can do a blanket stitch. I just like to make it so that it stays together at the edge. And I'm just going to use white thread. Okay, so now it is ready to put on the binding. Okay, now that we have our placemat quilted, we're going to be putting on the binding. So remember, we cut 2 pieces of 2.5 inch strips, the width of the fabric, and we're going to take the first one and then we're going to lay it down, and then we're going to take the second one and line it up in the corner here, and we're going to put a pin right up here, and then we're going to sew across right on the diagonal, okay, to make our strip longer. Okay, so let's go to the sewing machine and we'll do that. Okay, so when we do this, we want this corner to be lined up with where our needle is going down. And then we're going to drive straight across. And I do a quick back stitch. And then we'll just go straight across. And then drive off. Okay. Okay, so here we have, when you open it up, then you'll see that looks like it's straight across. Isn't that nice? Okay, so now we're going to come back. Now that we know that we did it right, we're going to come back and we're going to just trim so we have our 1/4 of an inch seam right across. Okay, great. Now we have that all ready, and now we're going to go to the ironing board to prep our binding strip. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and fold our binding in half, and then we're going to iron all the way down to prepare it so we can bind our placemat. The thing I like about doing these placemats, if you haven't actually made a quilt before, you haven't done binding, this is a great project to practice on. I am using steam for this. I want crisp folds for my binding. I know some people will even starch their fabric. Now that we're done with this one, this is for the first placemat. If you have your other one, go ahead and iron that, and then meet me back at the sewing machine and we'll pin it together. So the way the directions go for the binding, they want you to fold in the edge 1/2 of an inch and iron it down. So we're going to do that to just follow the way the pattern has you do it. Okay, so here we have it 1/2 an inch, and then go ahead and pin it. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to go right in the middle of our placemat, and we're on the back side. Okay, and we're going to take our binding and we're going to go about 3 inches in, and we're going to start pinning it on, and we're going to do the raw edges to the edge of our placemat. Okay, so we're just going to pin that right here to the corner. When we get to the corner, you'll see we'll sew right here and back stitch, and then we will sew right off the edge about 1/2 an inch from the corner. Okay, so let's start there and do that part. And we're not going to pin the rest because we have to make our mitered corners. Okay, so I've put red thread in the top and then matching thread to the front on the bottom, and which for me, I'm just using white. I don't have any gray. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and sew and then back stitch. Okay, and then we're gonna do a diagonal and we're gonna sew off diagonally, okay? And then just cut it right there. Okay, and then we're going to turn our placemat and we're going to go to the corner and we're going to lift it up So we've got it right at the corner, and we're going to bring it up. And then we're going to bring it straight down. Okay, and make sure that it is lined right up with the top. Okay, and we'll start sewing. Make sure it's right even with the edge. Again, we will do the same thing. We'll turn it and sew off of the corner again. So we're sewing, it's about half an inch from the corner. And we'll do it again. We'll put our corner up. This time I just sewed right off, and now we'll do our corner again. If you bring it all the way up, then you're going to get a nice corner. Okay, we're going to stop so we have a couple of inches before the end. Okay, so now we have our ends together. Okay, so we have our strip that we're sewing on, and then we have our folded end right here. And we're going to bring it across, and we're going to cut about an inch overlay. And then what we're going to do is we're going to stick this inside of the one that we have just sewn. Okay, so it needs to match up to where it's sewn. So I need to cut just a little bit more. Okay, then you're going to stick this towel inside of the one that's already sewn. So tuck it in and make it so it's straight. Okay, and this is a beginner's binding. This is not an advanced one. This is beginners. Okay. Okay. Now we're going to start sewing where we stopped and backstitch, and then we're going to sew and then end right over top of where we started and backstitch over there. Okay, you have to be careful of this lip. It wants to lift up, so make sure that you get over top of it so it doesn't bend. Okay, great. We've got the back stitch done and we've got the back done. Now, after we trim all of our strings off, once everything is trimmed, then go ahead and we are going to flip it all over. Okay, so let's do our first corner and see how we did. Great. Okay, so we're going to flip it all over to the front. Okay, one thing I find that I do, some people will do something different, but with this project, I'm just going to cut off the edge of the quilt corner so that there's a little bit more room when I am putting my corner over. So, okay, so once you've got it folded over, and we can begin sewing. If you feel like you want to pin it, then pin it. I'm just going to go ahead and hold it and sew it. Do a little back stitch. So the goal is to fold over this line that we made from sewing it on the other side. That's our guide. And then we're gonna just sew it along the edge. If you want to use your designs on your sewing machine, this is a great time to use those designs. For me, I'm just going to sew a straight stitch, but feel free to use any of your designs you have if you want. Okay, so just continue around doing your binding until you get to the bottom and back stitch, and you will be done. Okay, now we've completed our gnome placemats. That was a lot of fun. It was a lot of hard work, but we did it. So thanks for joining me this week on Creating Joy.